This is a Kenwood model KD-850 turntable. I've been told that it started off by blowing fuses and then eventually wouldn't power on at all. There's been a little bit of work done to this already before me, but not much. The owner would really like to get this running, as would I. So let's see if we can make it happen. Rule number one, when something's blowing fuses, let's not power it back on until we open it up and take a look. Let's take a quick look inside before I get started. Up to this point in my life, I've worked on precisely 0 turntables, so my ignorance will be pretty obvious when it comes to terminology and the way these work. But I do know that since it's not powering on, the first place to look is the power supply board. So I'll rotate this, we'll take a closer look at that. There are a few components under this shield, so let's get that removed. We now have access to the power supply board. The owner did mention that the main capacitor was cut and removed for troubleshooting. We'll fix that later. Other than that, everything appears to be intact. Even the fuse is in place, intact, and correct, 2 amps at 250 volts. Let's review the schematic and try and figure out how this power supply works. Here's the power supply board on the schematic. AC enters the board from the transformer via pins 3 and 4. It's rectified via this bridge rectifier D1. It's then smoothed out via this capacitor C2, this big one right here. And then we have 3 output rails. Rail number 1 is 14.2 volts via pin 13, and that's regulated by this IC1, which I believe is just a 15 volt regulator. Rail number 2 is 23.5 volts via pin 14, and that is unregulated. It comes directly after the bridge rectifier. Rail number 3 is 22 volts via pin 15, and that is regulated via Q1 and Zener diode D2. So what to test on the power supply? Well, this unit's decades old, so regardless of how they test, I'm going to replace both electrolytics. I'll measure both resistors, make sure those are what they need to be. My main suspects are the semiconductors. I'm going to pull those and test those individually. That's going to be the bridge rectifier here, the 15 volt regulator IC1 here, and the transistor Q1 here. The resistor closest to us should be 470 ohms. Reading 463, seems okay. And the other one should be 100 ohms. 98.1, those are fine. Let's check for dead shorts. We'll start with IC1, the 15 volt regulator. That looks good. Move on to transistor Q1. That looks good as well. And our bridge rectifier D1. That is shorted all the way around. Definitely bad. Now, due to their age, I'm going to replace IC1, transistor Q1 anyway, as well as bridge rectifier D1. I'll order replacements for this and this capacitor. And I also noticed that one of the tabs for the fuse holder is pretty flimsy. It's not providing a lot of support tension on the fuse, so I'll try and replace that as well. All the replacement parts have arrived. Time to rebuild the power supply. The power supply rebuild is complete. It looks very nice. Time to reinstall and test. I've reconnected the power supply. It's test time. I haven't connected anything to the outputs yet. I want to verify proper functionality of the power supply before moving on. It's all powered on. As a reminder, pin 13 should be somewhere around 15 volts. The schematic has it labeled as 14.2. That doesn't make any sense to me. This is being regulated by a 15-volt regulator, so 15.2 volts makes more sense to me. I'm happy with that. Pin 14, schematic has it labeled as 23.5 volts, but this is completely dependent on your incoming AC voltage, and there's no adjustment for this, so 27.6 volts looks fine to me. And pin 15 should be right around 22 volts. 22.3 looks great. So I'd say the power supply is back. That was a successful repair of the power supply board for this Kenwood KD-850 turntable, but there's quite a bit of work yet to be done. If you're interested in seeing how this turns out, I will post a follow-up video on my Patreon page. A link to that page will be in the description for this video. Thanks for watching.